My name is Vivek Sharma. I'm with BizSecure. I'm the founder of BizSecure, and we do information security and compliance assessment. And we help to meet all the security controls for HIPAA, ISO, PCI, all the various compliance. We have a SaaS-based platform which help you to see all the various controls and draft all the policies and then automate your security and compliance assessments.
I would start off with a question that's actually not on the list of questions we talked about. How do you think we are doing as an industry, keeping up with the shifting landscape?
Yeah, I would like to add on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, as Dave mentioned that security awareness is definitely important. And I think we have all the great appliances, right, in the market, and we're still seeing Fortune 500 companies in the evening news. And the biggest thing is we do not focus on the security design right now, right? So generally, the security design flaw, getting these companies, in a kind of a attack situation where they don't detect where the design come from, because attackers are not focusing to compromise the appliances, but they rather target companies which have a big security design. So we should start, I would say, security design assessments more periodically.
Yeah.
That would definitely help.
And how do you see those working? Do you see the security team basically embedded with your product teams then as they design their products? Or?
Yeah, so generally we hire solution architects and designers in the beginning, and they help to design all the security infrastructure, and then we let them go.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are definitely thousands of production changes go live, and then there could be a human error which we cannot detect and see how design is getting broken, right? So that ended up a data breach for these big companies, because they are not lacking on budgets. They have the best appliances, but we still see them in the evening news.
Yep. It was interesting in the keynote at lunch. Agent Chan said that smart attackers attack people, right, or something along those lines. And it's true. I think our people are our weakest link right now. And so that brings up a question around what does effective security training look like for employees? I think every company will tell you that they do annual security training. They talk to their employees about good security hygiene, password hygiene, things like that. And yet these attacks continue to happen. So what does a good employee training program look like?
So as you know that every single implementation requires certain number of security controls, right? So those security control enforcement needs to be changed. The way we are doing today, we use a manual method, like have a spreadsheet and Word documents, meeting with people and educating them, okay, these controls should be met, but that's not is happening everywhere across the board. Right, that's where the gaps are. Some of the departments are doing great job in meeting all those security controls, but some, due to the human error or lack of knowledge on those controls, they are failing on that, and that's ended up a security design flaw, basically.
We were talking about our users, and I think as I look out across the security landscape right now, what I see is some of our requirements that we put on our vendors, that we put on our users, that we put just in place, have become outdated. And Poorna, you brought a point about our some of the controls that we have in place today, some of the requirements that we have in place today around security. Are they actually hurting us because they're outdated, they create friction, and they make it harder to get your work done, and kind of incentivize people to do and run around them because of that? And what are some of the examples that you've seen of just bad security requirements?
Yeah, I think most of the companies just trying to buy a lot of different appliances, right? So rather than manage the security solutions and the appliances they have in-house, and just to have all the effectiveness of those appliances, they're basically increasing the surface of attack surface by adding up more systems in the company. I have seen where companies had an overlap. They have a next-gen firewall which does 3 different things, and then they have individual appliances doing the same thing. Now, obviously vendors are selling saying that, okay, this would be additional multi-layer security, but they forget that now they have to do the management on all those. They have to patch all these different appliances. They have to enforce the 1,000 policies which come from different frameworks and stuff on all these appliances. So I think rather than adding more appliances and adding more tools, if they just focus on some basic security practice, referring any framework, and just enforce the policies and see those controls are effective or not. And I think that can definitely help in protection rather than buying so many security controls and not having a process and procedures to manage those.
Well, one thing we haven't talked about is, we talked about users, we talked about our own, perimeters, our own devices, and stuff like that. We haven't talked about third parties, right? We live in a world now where everyone here has a third-party SaaS provider that they're using, some sort of third party that creates risk for them. And a lot of the breaches that we've seen have come from third parties, right? I think what we're seeing, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, is we're seeing a shift from attackers not going after their primary targets directly, but going after kind of like vendors are the new watering hole. Vendors are, if you can pop the production environment of a vendor in the healthcare space, you now have access to the healthcare information for multiple healthcare providers, not just that one hospital that you're going after. Is that, combining that with our users or our employees being attacked, do you see, where do you see vendors fitting into all of this? Where do you see third parties fitting into all of this? And can we effectively, are we effectively assessing the security of those vendors today?
Yeah, I will share one of my experiences. During our assessment, we found out that the client's firewall configured reversed. So rather than protecting the third party, their company from other third parties, it was actually protecting third party to them. So these type of configurations or these kind of design flaw doesn't come in the vulnerability scans, right? So they're not going to show any design problems. And things like that, and that happens, when third parties are not compliant. So at least if we set some requirements for third parties, like they have to go through certain compliance requirements, then that can give us a surety that that company has a certain security measures in place. And so generally, they don't have those kind of certifications, and that's where we ended up, leaving the security hole.
Are the certifications working though, right? We still see breach after breach after,
right.
And we're all doing security reviews, and we're all looking for these soft tools.
Yeah, the biggest challenge is all these security reviews and assessments are manuals, right? So as I mentioned, like spreadsheets and Word documents. Now, if you really look into these real manuals, there are thousands of pages to meet certain security controls, right? So if we start sitting down with every single department and understand, okay, what do we have in place, what is missing, how effectively these things are working, that will take years to understand what our security posture look like. And we definitely need some automation to really understand where your system go out to all different departments, collect all the information. It will not just provide you information that if you have controls in place or not, but it also will educate your staff that how effectively they should configure those controls, right? Like having intrusion prevention detection system, and if it's asking the manager that, okay, does it trigger alert in case of any intrusion, right? So that way, engineer or managers are learning at the same time. Having an IPS, IDS on a Visio diagram would not really help. We need to tune it to really make it work right. So automation can definitely help and really give you a peace of mind that, okay, this company is certified and how they have done. I think process is definitely another key area where companies should need some improvement and expedite these assessments and certifications.
I agree 100%. We need to standardize on something, and we need to keep the questions to your point, as specific to something that actually improves security in a meaningful way versus just asking you to reset your employee password every 90 days, right?
Right.
But if you're relying on a questionnaire, if you're relying on a review of controls, how do you adapt fast enough to ask the right questions for the current threat landscape?
So I think, again, I'm talking about this because these all thoughts were in mind while we were building our system. So not to talk about our system, but that system actually not only detect the risks, but also will help you in remediation efforts, right? So now it will create all the products, what really you need to do, and it will go back to the same, the owners to find out, okay, did we remediate those risks or not? So it's all about trackability, right? So we never had this trackability because as I mentioned that we are doing manually collecting information, telling them, okay, get this fixed, all different departments. We have so many project managers to find out, okay, where we stand. And then by the time we figure it out, where we stand, is that remediated or not, it's too late. We are already in the news. So that's why I think this whole system needs to be integrated where we are finding all the risks, what needs to be done. Its system is going back to all the owners, finding out the information, okay, it's addressed, and then reflecting the reports by itself rather than the all manual process. So if it's all integrated on one system, to find the risk and to do the remediation, do the risk reassessment and see where we stand and where we started from, it can make CISO's lives a lot easier to justify all the stakeholders. Here we where we started from, and here we are, right? And rather than putting reports all manually, it shows that we all are swamped to getting a security, but it's very hard to justify that even though we have made so much improvement and we are very mature in security. So I think the integration would be definitely a big help.
I mean, in general, we find the bug bounty to be very helpful. It's not very cost effective if you don't have good security inside first, right? So if you do that in conjunction with a robust kind of internal pen testing and overall assessment process on your own, sometimes using automated tools, there's a vendor downstairs that does vendor assessments as part of an external view of your risk. And we use those companies as well. And I think that with a combination of that, you probably get a much better sense of assurance that your vendors are going to be good to work with. I mean, no one's going to be perfect, but clearly if you have someone that's scanning outside and they've got, poodle vulnerabilities, you might want to think twice.
Right. And so I guess, going back to what you were talking about earlier, Vivek, about security by design, right? Like, it's very hard to, you can understand the controls around, the company can respond to you and say, this is how we've implemented security by design, but taken by itself, that's not going to give you 100% signal. But when you start testing their security by design, whether it's through penetration testers or getting researchers to look at them, it's a much better signal where they are doing the right thing. Right? You almost don't even have to look at their security by design implementation if you see that they're just it's very hard to find vulnerabilities from the outside in. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But definitely, another thing is like you will get to see a lot of Visio diagrams with the very solid design ideas, all the security measures are on the Visio diagram. But when you really run, as you mentioned, that penetration test and one scan, a lot of things might not be set up right.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of companies might be using a right version, secure version of SNMP v3, but there will also be SNMP 1, which is actually vulnerable, right? So having just the better security is not doing enough until you really make sure that where the problems are, and those can easily be detected with the bone scan, penetration test, and also the other security design reviews. Validation is definitely the key thing that can be done in multiple different ways. Yeah.
If you had to choose one area of security that you would double your investment in, what would you choose? And this is not to say you're doing bad job of security anywhere, but where do you see? This is similar to the highest risk question you asked earlier. But where would you spend more money?
I think I would spend a lot of money on the assessments and validation, right? So I think the validation is a key area where we should start focusing on. We are definitely, I think we all learned a lot about cybersecurity, and that has encouraged us to buy a lot of security appliances, and now we are hoping that we are secure and protected from cyber attacks. And that's really not adequate, what we see in the news. So I think we should definitely start periodic assessments on the security designs and do more work on the process and procedures, how our changes go in. And another thing is, I think every company should never let their solution architects and designers go, because they are the key people to really keep your design integrated. If they are not there, no matter how good your appliances are or how effectively they are working, you will still have some security holes. So those are the areas I think.
Yeah.
Also, like, but how do you guys do that internally? Like, for instance, like, we're hiring security people as well. It's not necessarily my role, but I'm interested in, like, how do you find that the good person? Like, how do you know that's the right fit for what you want?
That's a pretty broad question. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think what we are trying to do, we hired risk side, risk experience folks, and the security side, and the solution architects, and build a team called A Team, and then providing a subscription, so company do not have to hire all those officers, and they can just subscribe with us and they can pay as they go, kind of thing. So there are other companies as well, they have a kind of a subscription based for the security folks. So I think that is another kind of way which saves a lot of money as well, and then you get all the expertise.
In the self-managed data center model or colo data center model, the data layer was at layer 3 or 4 in the sense you have web layer, and then you have app layer, then data this layer, and then NetApp or EMC, whatever. So in the Cisco firewall or Juniper, you have certain firewall rules. The external traffic directly cannot reach DB layer or storage layer. But in the cloud model, our data layer could be anywhere because of S3 bucket security groups, and so our exposure landscape have widened, and attack vector is so simple. So could you please talk on that one?
Yeah, so on the cloud, you still have to, you're literally just taking your physical location in the cloud, right? But you have to do the segregation in the same
Yeah.
way, right? So going in a cloud, that doesn't mean that we will not have those layers and segregation. So we have to build the same segregation in the cloud now. So that's kind of a challenge, but it's not like it's gonna be a flat layer where you can't have any kind of segregation where it's where you can have access control. So similarly controls what we have in a physical data centers today, same controls needs to be met in the cloud. So there isn't much difference. It won't be literally flat.
And if the cloud provider doesn't have those controls, probably don't
Yeah.
go with them.
No,
Yeah.
they
Because-
do, but the people like S3 bucket getting open.
Yeah.
So how can we improve the security? The cloud provider do provide control, but the engineers, previously I had to have network engineers separate from web and app layer. Now one engineer does. He creates S3 bucket, he spins up easy to instance, he spins up web layer, and he does everything. So the education needs to be changed to bring one engineer to have all skills.
I think.
Yeah, so that is actually a very big challenge right now. We're thinking that, we do not need a network engineers for the cloud, and the same solution are available in the cloud. And we have to find a designer. So these all companies, the cloud companies, they do offer paid services. It's just a different way of doing it. They offer their consultation and they design everything, but ultimately behind the scene, it's happening the same thing. We're literally designing the data center in the cloud. So there is not really a huge difference that what we were doing here, that is just only a knowledge difference. We knew that, okay, we understood the one way of doing it. We built the data center, we built the network security, built the application security, but now we're kind of relying on these cloud service people to do everything for us. So ultimately, they would have to do the same thing. They do have their own appliances, they have their architects, and they will be literally doing the same thing. It's just we don't know how they are doing now because it's not that common yet, that knowledge. And then frameworks are generally very good to start with when you build any security infrastructure, right? For the cloud, we have a SOC type 1, type 2, right? We can refer those to kind of design our security as well. So that would help to define the roadmap.
Make sure your developers don't put API keys in public GitHub repos. It helps a lot too.
Once you give that risk to someone and say, look, this may be a security risk, but your team owns that security risk, they react very differently to when they get engaged with the security team, how they think about what they're doing, and how open they are to slowing down a little bit so that we can deploy features or new services correctly.
Yeah. The same challenge, I think 10 to 20 years ago, we had the same challenge when people didn't know that what is the value of, buying these appliances. They didn't have a allocated budget for security, right? So now that has changed.
Exactly.
Everybody know what is the importance, why we need to buy all these appliances. Now they have a lot big budgets, right? So I think people should start focusing on the root cause, that why these still big companies are in use. And once they see that, and then they all automatically will start doing the assessments, and wherever the gaps are, they will start investing the budget. So I think it's just a little bit of weakness on us to really show them,
Exactly.
like, okay, where's the root cause, here's the root cause we think is, and just, portray that in reports, and I think that should explain.
Quick question,
Yeah.
for that, third-party risk, wouldn't it be a SOC 2 Type 2 certification?
You can look at that, right? That gives you a good sense of their controls, right? It gives you a snapshot in time of what they're doing. But I think it doesn't start and end there. That's a good way to get a sense of how the company approaches protecting their infrastructure and their data, right? But
But you have to be careful too, because those are very tightly scoped.
yeah, yeah.
NIST
So-
also have that,
Yeah.
right?
So you need more. It's definitely something you need.
Yeah.
You need these certifications, you need these audits, but you can't stop there. And one thing I say is you want to try and find external controls that you can validate independently and find some way to do continuous testing. And that is combined with the other typical RFI process and review process. That's engaging there.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, everyone.